There are so many terrible localizers out there who don't care about respecting the material they're working with. They are more focused on pushing their own personal political propaganda into the content they're supposed to be faithfully adapting, and now we're finding out that Trails in the Sky First is being censored at the source, and none of us are shocked, but this is of course very disappointing. I have a few different things to show off, but before I get into the topic, if you enjoy the content I create, check out the links in the description, join the community in my live streams, and consider supporting through Patreon or YouTube memberships. Now, this is a perfect example as to why so many of us are so cautiously optimistic when it comes to remakes and remasters and reboots, because of course, the reason why a franchise got popular in the first place is because of the content that someone today might say is culturally insensitive or they might deem too offensive. So when they remake these titles, they end up putting all of these different trigger warnings at the beginning of a game. They'll cover up certain cleavage or panty shots, they will alter dialogue, and they will just tone it down. And then people don't end up wanting a politically correct pile of slop. All you're really doing is making it so your game sells less copies because the people that you're censoring it for don't play games, so they're not going to support you monetarily, and then you're pushing away older fans of a series, and that is exactly what is happening right now with Trails in the Sky, because we're finding out the localizers have apparently taken it upon themselves to alter this work, even though they previously had promised a faithful adaptation. And this is why I always say don't trust localizers, and really just don't trust teams behind remakes in general, because they can make a lot of promises and then not end up keeping them. And if it wasn't for eagle-eyed fans on social media, we wouldn't even know that it was heavily altered. So this is a post by Pirate Nation. It says, Trails in the Sky First is being censored at the source. The Sky remake releases next month, which, by the way, it had a lot of hype behind it, and I don't necessarily know how much of that hype is going to stick now. With its demo out for a week, Gung Ho's localization team promised a faithful translation of the Japanese script, but we know that these people use faithful very loosely at this point. Well, I mean, if it's 85% of the same, that's close enough to faithful, right? That's their mentality. While most of the Japanese script stays true to the original, some problematic lines were changed directly in Japanese. These changes are in the prologue covered by the demo, so never mind when you get into the meat and potatoes of the game what else ends up being altered. But here we go. On the left is the original, and on the right is the remake. A child, you say? What a thing to say to a maiden. Says that in both. What do you mean, maiden? You're dressed without any sex appeal. What do you mean, maiden? You're dressed without any sex appeal. If it bothers you, then put on a skirt or something and try acting like a girl your age, too. If it bothers you, then at least a little bit act like a girl your age and dress the part. This is clothing for using a staff. If I wore a skirt, you'd be able to see everything, wouldn't you? 2, this is clothing for stick fighting. What do you mean, like a girl? What do you mean, like? This is so dumb. I can't believe they would change it from using a staff to stick fighting. Why is it that we have to have people altering these works in the most brain dead way possible? It's like how localizers will put in like modern day terminology or slang because they think that it's funny and it's cool and it's hip with the kids, when really it just continues to damage the image of that piece of work. It got popular in the first place because fans thought it was perfect the way that it was. So why is it you think that you can do better? And then of course they say, like a girl. What do you mean like? And while there are certainly going to be people out there who say, well, it's not that big of a deal, it's only a couple of lines of dialogue, look at all of the censorship that is spreading across the internet and also specifically in the video game industry. If we give these companies an inch, they will take a mile, and that is why it is so important to call out every single instance of censorship and voice how unhappy we are with these vocalizers being in the industry, because if we let them run rampant, they will continue to do severe damage to series, and one day it will be a series you care about, but by then it will be far too late. These people are cultural Marxists. They're SJWs hijacking the gaming industry, not to make games better, but to inject political agendas, rewrite narratives, and police players' behavior in the name of progress. We also know that in the past, Trails of Cold Steel 3's localization team had actually admitted to censoring dialogue. This was back in 2020. The localization team behind Trails of Cold Steel 3 had admitted on a live stream that they willingly alter dialogue they personally deem as sexist or culturally inappropriate. Yet another instance of Western barbarians thinking they stand above all others and can police what should and shouldn't be allowed in fictional content. And the topic was brought up during a live stream where two people on the team were asked how they redo jokes that don't work in English. And then, of course, they basically say, hey, we just changed them, as if they don't care and as if it's just another day that ends with a Y. So it's clear at this point that they didn't change localization teams, or really, over the past 5 years, they haven't truly listened to our feedback, because this was happening back in 2020 with 3. It's happening now again with the first remake. They just don't care, and this is why we need to continue to fight back and ultimately speak with our wallets, because they will continue to try to push the limits, and it's not going to get better if we do not fight back. Here's another line of dialogue that was changed. You're pretty good for a woman to you're pretty good for a rookie. Why is it the word woman is so offensive now? Why is referring to someone by their gender so offensive at this point? It will never make sense to me personally. I'm a woman. I'm not confused. Most people out there aren't confused, and tons of gamers are now voicing how unhappy they are with this. This image is actually blowing up quite a bit. It's a kind of compilation of localizers over the past several years bragging about how much damage they've done to anime and manga, and they don't really care about respecting the source material. They really just care about pushing their own ideology into the work other people are going to consume. The true joy of localization is really seeing what you can get away with. I look forward to the day we can just leave everything in Japanese and still cash a paycheck. Ah, yes, politically correct is a verb that describes how SJWs improve translations, which of course most of us definitely do not agree with. Here's a threat on my thought on censorship. I think they mean thread in general, because I'm sure you really want to know. Buckle up, because it's long. If you're against censorship as the word is used online, you probably need to be against capitalism in general. I know I'm going to open a huge can of worms, but here goes. This is by Katrina Translator, by the way, somebody who is infamous in this space. As translators, what is the right way to handle offensive content? Who determines what gets left in and what gets censored? Definitely not you. If you are hired to adapt something, translate something, localize something, you should be doing so as accurately and faithfully as possible. And these people just don't give a fuck at this point. And that's why we're not going to shed a tear if they end up getting fired. I've talked recently about how Crunchyroll has gone through some layoffs. We've also seen that Crunchyroll is starting to replace some localizers with AI. And while I will typically fight for human beings to keep their jobs, at this point, these human beings have proven they can't put their politics aside in order to just continue to create content for people in an unbiased manner. And so I'm not going to sit here and defend them. I guess if AI is going to replace them, it's gonna happen. Another demake releasing this month, it seems. I can read Japanese and this checks out. I've rarely seen the Japanese dialogue be changed when it's mostly the localizer. This is full-on censorship of the game, and I would not suggest buying this version. Then they wonder why remakes don't do well when the original is better. This is why I always recommend playing and purchasing the original if you can over a remake. How do Japanese fans feel about this? Are they sick of the wokery too? It does seem that they have faced a lot of backlash from Japanese gamers over the years, but of course, I think we are still the most vocal group, at least online at this point. This is ridiculous, but expected nowadays. I was wondering what was censored. Thanks for the heads up. More reasons to not buy a game if they can't keep it properly. Great. What do they have against skirts? What do they have against women? What do they have against comedy? So I'll definitely be keeping my eye on this situation. I'm not surprised, but of course I am really sad to see this happen. It was a game a lot of people were looking forward to, and hey, if you still think that it looks good, I hope you buy it and you play it and you enjoy it. But at this point in time, it does seem that this game is heavily altered, and if you're going to buy it, just stay very cautiously optimistic though. Even though these localization teams have promised a faithful translation of the Japanese script, the lie detector has determined that that is a lie. But that's all that I really had to discuss in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this and found it important and informative, make sure to give it a like, and if you didn't, give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I'll talk to you all again in the next video really soon.